as I started living in Europe full time during the end of my career, I mean, there was periods of time, I'd maybe go, I would write in English, emails or texts or something like that. But I mean, you might go, I might have gone, a month or two without speaking one word of English, and it's weird how, and when you become bilingual and you start speaking one language, and I've even talked to Rainey about this, about Swedish and everything. When you speak in one language for so long, or that's your main language, as you speak, 24/7 for months on end, your thoughts start becoming in that language. So I remember actually sometimes coming back to the U.S. for like the Vegas races and thinking in Italian, but then naturally when we were in Vegas, there was many English-speaking people to speak with, and you're thinking in Italian but speaking in English, and like you start sounding like you have broken English, and you're thinking, no, I sound stupid, and you even forgetting words in English because you're thinking in Italian. So it's kind of hard to just explain, and I know it sounds really stupid because you think, oh, if you know one language and you've been speaking it for your whole life and it's your first language, you should be able to speak it all the time. But I mean, people have said, oh, you have an accent and you speak broken English, and it would be like that. And I remember because sometimes I would come over for Vegas, and then I would stay from Vegas through the Christmas break. And, after a couple of weeks that you're only speaking in English, you don't speak a word of Italian, your thoughts revert back to English, your accent kind of goes away, and your broken English is kind of gone because it's really strange to think in one language and speak in another. And it's the same now when I've gone over to Italy or speak to all my vendors in Italian, naturally all my thoughts are in English, but now I'm speaking in Italian. So now my Italian is broken and not as good as what it used to be when I was speaking it all the time.
Yeah. When you say that, I've noticed a few times while we're talking at the shop. I think, what is it that you call waterline piping?
Oh, I don't know. Well,
I think you call it piping.
Water pipe, yeah, or like
the
fuel pipe, yeah.
I've noticed that there's a few of those words that, distinctively in English over here, there's a certain word for it. And I've heard you, and it's just so natural to you because you were over there and so entrenched. And I find myself thinking, like, what is he talking about? I mean, it's yeah. So you had the CRG experience. So would you say that was the pinnacle of your karting career?
I think. Well, no, obviously that's. Yeah, from a driving standpoint, and I would say obviously my results were the best during that time. But I think a lot of that was, because we had the right engine, the material, the karts were really good. I mean, CRG is obviously one of the best go-karts, and been the leading kart manufacturer for a very long time. And I think a lot of it too, I was probably driving the best because I was in the go-kart all the time. I've told a lot of people, there's actually in Europe, I never really got to drive or test that much at all in any race team that I was in. It was more always in States. And I always tell people, people always say like, oh, it must be really cool to be a factory driver. You get to drive all the time. And it's like, no, actually it's complete opposite. Meaning the factory, they only go out and test when they have to. And when they absolutely have to, because it's money to them, that's an expense. And especially now, I mean, before the economic crash in 2018, there was much more testing being done. But after 2008, I mean, all the factories were, a lot more cautious of what they spent their money on and everything. So the testing went down. So for me, getting to do all the races in the U.S., and going back and forth to Europe in the span of, 2007, 2008, and even 2009. Now I think that's when I was obviously the best at driving because I was just in it all the time. go-karting is one of those sports, everyone got the same term, right? Seat time, seat time, seat time. And it shows. I mean, it shows even with the best drivers. I remember seeing Marco Artigo kind of struggle a little bit when he had problems with his ribs and he had to stay out of the go-kart for 6 months. And he showed up to the World Championships and he was, in the teens, where normally someone like a Marco Artigo, you put money on that he could win the race.
Yeah.
So it just shows that, it's so important to get out and drive as much as you can.
Yeah. So after your CRG stint, well, let me ask you this. What did you do while you were over there? So it's like, if you're not in the seat all the time, but you're living there, what did you do?
Well, during my CRG days, I mean, a lot of times I'd get there maybe a week or two early for the race, and I'd just help the guys build carts. I'd build my own carts, load the trucks, and just do those kind of things. Just working in the race team, and basically, they'd have all the other factory drivers there. It's not free labor, so to speak, but I mean, a lot of the drivers assembling their go-karts and helping do all that stuff. And, I mean, during my CRG days, I spent a lot of time in Europe, but it wasn't like I wasn't living there, so to speak. CRG had their apartment in the factory, and I'd maybe say 2-3 weeks at a time, maybe a month and a half. If there was races in a row, and that we're going to maybe do one test in between, and I didn't have any races in North America, I would maybe stay, there for that time. But during my CRG days, even though I did spend a lot of time in Europe, I guess I wasn't living there, and that was the whole thing. I mean, it was. We had a lot of success in North America and winning the national championships a few years in a row, but I was always kind of the type of guy like, okay, I've done it. I won the national championship in the States. I didn't care to continue, doing that. I was always trying to get that seat at CRG where, and I think CRG was like that. They preferred me going back and forth, but I wanted to be the guy that was, the main guy for CRG and only lived in Europe. And I thought after 2010, where we did the WSK World Series, which was, basically took place at the CIK FIA World Championship that year, where all the big manufacturers basically boycotted the FIA Championship and went with the WSK World Championship, and it was 3 rounds, 3 World Championship rounds. And what was cool about that series and gave me a little bit better chance in a series like that was all the tracks were basically that no one went to or never had been to. And they had one European round in Portimao, Portugal, which was a brand new track that no one ever went to. And I started, and that was my first race of this European season, but it was already in summertime. And I hadn't done any races then before. And that was when I kind of came into my own. I knew the team. I knew the language. I knew the way of the land. Basically, I'd done enough racing there, and before I didn't have the TechSav engines. I finally got the TechSav engines at the time. Were the thing to have, and showed up to Portimao. It was an even playing field for everybody, and because it was a brand new track, and actually set the track record. And I think I still actually have the track record there, which is probably one of my what I think is a cooler accomplishment to have a track record at a European track. And literally, I was the guy to beat, and probably one of the most devastating moments of my career was leading that whole final with a little bit of gap to my teammate Jonathan Tanan, who was like the unbeatable at that time. And I remember literally looking at Mattia Madami was my mechanic at that race, and looking up, because I'm a type of driver that I like the communication between the mechanic and me. So every lap, looking at the mechanic, and he just gave me that, dude, perfect, like just 2 more laps of this, and we got it. And I remember going down the straightaway and just thinking, like, I'm going to win this race. Like, I'd have to be, you have to throw it away kind of deal. I'm going to win this race. And literally when I thought that, the engine started cutting out. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Right. And I fell back to third in that race. And just, it was actually, I had been on the podium a few times in WSK races. And actually my very first race in the European Championship in KZ2, I got second. And there was actually a couple races where I was leading. And I guess my whole CRG experience and almost European experience, like I had so many times, like in the second round of the European Championship in France, in my first year in Europe, I was leading the pre-final, and the engine, and then actually the water belt broke, and the engine got too hot and stuck. And it's just like, and they're like, okay, this, and it was a couple of years after that I didn't have the Tech 7 engines. I was running the factory CRG engines, and we were having a lot of problems. And then I did one off year in 2009 where I did the World Championships, and we were having problems, and we finally fixed the problem. And I started 25th or something, and within 9 laps, I'm in 9th, turned in the fastest laps of the race, and the engine blew up. It was always just, something, like just so close, but yet so far, right? And that race was the closest I got, and the engine started cutting out, and I got third. And I remember, being a World Championship round, KZ1. I mean, be on the podium, and we would think, dude, that's pretty awesome. But I literally had the look of disgust on my face, just knowing like I had it in the bag, and because of that technical problem, we lost out on that opportunity. But I ended up getting third in that championship. I should have been second, to be honest, and I made a huge mistake at the last race in Egypt and tried to go, make a pass for the lead, and where I shouldn't have, and all my fault, and crashed myself out. And so I ended up third in the championship there. And then actually that was kind of the year of misses, because then I showed up to Vegas that year in KZ, and that was the year that everyone was there, being the Artigos, the Bosses, Lammers, Puhaka. I mean, anyone was there that year, and really strong in qualifying, won a few heats. We actually broke a spark plug while leading the third heat, but it wasn't a big deal. Like, I was still starting 7th and just extremely fast that year. And I got turned around in the second corner and fell back to 20 something, and still drove back up to 6th. We had fast lap of the race. I mean, the cart and the engine were just so on kill that weekend, and it was just like another missed opportunity, like so close but yet so far. And my whole thing was, I'm thinking, into 2010 after these near misses, but I'm the only guy to ever go against Tanan and be faster than Tanan. All his other teammates, I've never even been close. And I'm thinking, yes, this is the year that I'm going to get my chance to be, full-fledged factory CRG, even though I was full-fledged, but be the guy at the factory and be at the head of R&D and everything. And Tanini sat me down at the end of the year, and he said, Gary, I don't know how to tell you this, and you've done a great job, but I have 2 world champions, being Arnold Kozlinski and Davide Fore, that were driving in the KF class, that they were going to scrap the KF program because the KF engines were just kind of a disaster, to be honest, with Maxter and everything. And we're going to move them to KZ, and there's not a place for you. And I was like, there's a place for you in North America, as always, but here in Europe, we can maybe have you come in and do the World Championships, but that's all I can really offer you. And I was devastated. I'm like, man, what do I have to do, to earn my place? But I mean, if you look, and a lot of people, it's because you were American, and it's like, no, it's because I didn't. Arnold Kozlinski was a world champion for CRG. Davide Fore was 5-time world champion. I just had the wrong teammates at the wrong time, or basically